All right. So hi, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. This is Sanjeev Jain, your host today. I am a co-founder and director with Enabling World, which is a boutique HR consulting firm. And very happy to welcome all of you to this very interesting and very relevant and a tough topic, which is on a return to office that all of us are talking about it, every now and then. And it's a complex subject, but we'll try to unpack it and try to get some perspective on what's happening and how to deal with it. All right. So before I begin and introduce our panelists, let me do that first. So first of all, we have, let me start with Raghu. Raghu, if you can just wave and say hi so that people know, unmute yourself maybe. So Raghu is my very senior professional and a friend and a colleague. And Raghu, thank you so much. I know you are holidaying outside, but you still found time. Raghu has been in Infosys actually for a long time, I would say, a rich experience. He was global head of Infosys BPM business, and he retired. He will never retire, but from the corporate, he retired about 6 months back, and he's a senior consultant, coach, and mentor. And Raghu, thank you very much for joining with us today. And I will be very delighted to hear your experiences, your wisdom on this interesting topic. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure being here. And so this topic is so hot, so relevant. I'll surely learn a lot from this deliberations for the next 1 hour. Thank you.
Perfect. Then we have Anupma Sachdev. Anupma is my old colleague, IBM days, and she's holding very responsible position. She's very young and women head of HR for very large organization called Concentrix. So that's again into largely BPO space. And so she has been holding different roles into global compensation, into talent management, into well-being, different areas. She has done well-rounded HR professional and very young senior HR leader for Concentrix. So Anupma, thank you so much for joining today. And I know you must be busy bringing people back to work. So thanks we pulled you out for 1 hour for this discussion.
No, thank you so much for the opportunity, and Sanjeev, I really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to interacting with and, more than that, learning from, both our expert panel as well as from the audience. Thank you.
Sure. Wonderful. And she's based at Gurgaon. Raghu right now is in Bangalore. Otherwise is based in Bangalore. So we have another Anu. She's Anu Day. Anu, good afternoon and welcome. So Anu is a multiple interest. She has been to deep interest in arts, and she's a clinical psychologist and a well-being expert. So she's a senior business development manager with Tatsam. Tatsam is an organization that I know very closely. We are partnered with, and they are doing some wonderful work on employee well-being. So Anu, thank you so much for coming here and sharing your perspective from your own clinical psychology background and your research and what you know around in the industry.
It's an absolute pleasure, and thank you so much for the invitation. And I think, as Anupama mentioned, it's such an amazing opportunity to be able to learn from the other panelists. And also, I think this situation we have no real precedent for. So I think it's something that we're all kind of overcoming together. And so it's really a pleasure to take part in the event.
All right. So before we begin with that introduction, just 2 minutes brief introduction to Enabling World, the company that I represent, and along with me, my partner, my friend, my brother, Sushil Tayal will also be there for some part. So this is about a decade-old organization, a boutique organization into HR consulting. And our vision is that we enable the world to realize its potential. We do it through 5 key pillars into HR technology and digitalization, into leadership and talent development, HR consulting, talent search and supply on a selective basis, and employee well-being is our very big focus, right? So these are 5 pillars through which we provide services. We have introduced the panel here already, and with that, let me stop sharing. And so let me share a little bit of context as we begin this topic. And guys, a few ground rules here. or hygiene factors. Keep it interactive since it's a large forum, so we may not be able to take questions, concurrently, but I will find opportunity. I will be tracking all the chats and the questions. Put all your questions and remarks in the chat if you can, and I will invite you. We'll keep some time towards the end for audience questions. And I know there are a lot of senior people here which we can learn from. I can see Aparna, Clifford, and many others, who have thankfully joined this session today. And so we'll keep it interactive as much as possible. Secondly, please keep yourself on mute. If you want to keep your video on, your choice, but keep your video on mute, yourself on mute, unless you're talking, so that the proceedings can go smoothly. All right. So with that, let me begin. There are two things, which are happening, which are great but not so great, right? One is a great resignation that we hear about. So I don't know what's great about it, but we call it a great resignation. So we have, as HR professionals that many of us are, we haven't seen that kind of, the churn in the industry that we are grappling with. And this is not something about India alone, but that's happening globally all across. People are, reassessing their choices they have to make. Should I go back to work? What kind of role should I take? And so there's a churn happening. I was talking to a, CEO of a company, and they're saying, Sanjeev, the dropout rate from the offer, I've never seen, right? And any candidate who is trying to take a job has 4 or 5 offers, and the resignation level is all-time high. So one is, it's not so great, but it's a great resignation, as we call it. That's one trend which is happening. And I think return to office is one of the contributing factor. That's what I believe, and we will hear our experts also. So that is one. Second, great but not so great, a phenomenon which is happening is a great disconnect. And I was reading a report from Forbes, which conducted a survey of employees across different continents and people at different levels who wants to go back to work, right? And the disconnect here is, if you look at executives, the senior level, they are 3 times more keen to get back to work compared to rest of the organization. And this is 3 times. This disconnect is one which is causing a lot of issues in the minds of the corporates and the employees. Who is interested in coming back to work? Is it really essential? And there are a lot of issues around this. It's one of the most complex, I would say, people issues that corporates would have ever handled, right? In terms of, and there is no consistency, and we don't have any global view here. I mean, we don't know, for example, sometimes you have best practices or a benchmark. Okay, let's look at West, let's look at maybe Fortune 500 companies to look for an answer. But today, no one knows the answer. Everyone is trying their own bit, trying their own luck and their own knowledge and their own wisdom to take certain decisions. So the world is confused, but certainly, and on top of it, I mean, we heard a lot of companies had already started planning to return to office, right? They had the plan. Someone said December, then January 2022. Some said we'll never come back to work. So there's all a mixed view around in the different corporate. But whoever even had decided, the new strain which has in the news now, right? And again, it is spilling water on the plans that people had. So we don't know. It's total confusing state right now. All right. So that's the topic we want to discuss today, that how can we humanize the whole phenomenon of return to work? What is happening? What are the issues involved? I can tell you 1 hour is not enough for getting answers to this. I don't claim that we'll be able to get answers to this issue, but I think what I can assure is with the experts that we have, we'll be able to get a little perspective on what's happening around this topic, and maybe pick up 2-3 key things or key learnings that we could take back and apply that in our respective organizations and wherever we are working, right? So that's what is what we promise, right? So with that, let us see if we can, let's begin that. Let's dive into this topic straight. So Anu, let me start with you, Anu Day, right? And so what are you seeing, first of all, what are the trends of, people returning to office? I mean, you are serving a lot of clients as Tatsam and your own research in clinical psychology. This must be an issue that you must be very interested in. So what are the key trends that you're seeing in India in particular? I mean, if we can keep focused a little more on India, that's our problem at hand. But if you want to make a reference to global trend, absolutely welcome. So let's start with that.
Sure. And I think, it may be useful to give everyone a little bit of context on what we're trying to do with Tatsam and, why we're doing these wellness audits. And I think one of the reasons you mentioned, Sanjeev, which is that a lot of the data that we have is based on a Western model, because that's where a lot of the research is done. And we felt that in Asia, in India especially, we don't have a lot of insights. And of course, I mean, all over the world, COVID is unprecedented. It's created a lot of challenges that we hadn't anticipated, which are more than beyond the virus itself. And so whilst, in the West, we're seeing, McKinsey reports and Aon are telling us sort of 60%, of people are quite apprehensive about returning to work. They have, highlighted that they have also been experiencing lower mental well-being because lockdowns and the uncertainty created by the pandemic, will impact everyone, and it has, I think, impacted all of us. And so it's quite an unpredictable situation for most people, which has created a lot of fear and anxiety. And our research in India, we found that, we're looking at actually slightly higher percentages of about 70% of people, showing some of the symptoms of burnout and chronic stress and anxiety. And although these are, not positive things, I think that it's a real opportunity for employers to review, their sort of induction programs when people are returning to work, and to really understand how people are feeling and how employees are feeling. Because I think, before we formally started the session, we were all talking about how not just COVID, but any type of anxiety or stress, chronic burnout and all of those things impact everyone differently. And so it's really important to have systems in place and resources in place to help people cope with this sort of challenging time that we're all facing. And I think it's become even more important now, because whilst people want to just go back to normal, right? We want the virus to be gone and to just go back to where we were before. Yeah. The period of 2 years of not being able to do that, and the prospect that there may be and more challenges coming, it's become more important to help people build their psychological resources, become a little bit more resilient and more adaptable to some of the changes that we're going to face. Yeah. And I think I'll just add that, so I think for HR professionals and for employers, it's really important that they understand how people are feeling, and then also have support systems in place to support them as they come back.
Absolutely, there's a lot of responsibility. So I think you covered a lot of points around what generally employees are feeling, and I think that's a very stressful time. I know a lot of people in my own close circles who are saying that, oh, now we have to go back, and they have set up their own systems, their own way of working at home. Anupma, if I can come to you, and thank you, Anu, for your opening comments. Sure. Anupma, I mean, I know as a CHRO at this time would be very tough, and to even decide and formulate your policy for return to office, right? I mean, what has been your experience? How have you handled this?
Yeah, so, Sanjeev, like you mentioned, if there's anything that's been a constant over the last about, almost 2 years now, it's change. Yeah. I think the number of changes that we've seen in trends and what we expect the future to be, this is probably in the 2-year frame, the number of different scenarios we've seen coming up are really, I've not seen in the past. It's gone from a point where we first started and we said work from home is the future. Work is never going to be the same, to a couple of months later where the trend really changed and we said that people are having fatigue sitting at home. We're realizing that the engagement levels are not the same. So companies are looking to bring employees back to work. So then moving to a model where the entire hybrid workforce sort of came into the picture, right? So a lot is changing and it's changing very, very rapidly. So I think the most important aspect of having the strategy is the fact that it's got to be very flexible. It's got to be very agile and that it's got to be able to change. So we have to continuously adapt to what's changing outside. And that's pretty much the way that we've defined this for ourselves as well. If I were to tell you that we don't have a one size fits all strategy because, for a couple of reasons, clients are looking at this very differently. You've got clients in different sectors and different parts of the world where their perceptions and decisions are in some ways being shaped by what's happening around them in their local context. It's also shaped by, clients have a very different perspective on how they look at risk. Some are more risk averse and don't see work from home as a long-term sustainable option, whereas others feel that this is great, this is working out very good for us. And while we hadn't thought about it earlier, we can think about this as an option now. So a couple of things that we do is, we talk as a leadership team very, very frequently. And we tend to review what is it that we're doing, how effective is it, and where is it that we need to make the changes. So we're making it a point to consciously be very adaptive and continue to keep an open mind and change. Second is, of course, a lot of it is also defined by what our clients are looking for. So that's a key part of what we have to keep in mind and making sure that we are able to adapt to that as well. And third is also very important, listening to our staff. So, through our roundtables, through Connects, we conducted pulse check surveys and we tried to understand what is it that staff are looking for? What if given a choice, if we have a choice as a business where we're standing at a crossroads where we have to decide, do we bring people back? Do we let them work from home? It's also important to understand what our staff are feeling. So that's something that we listen to very, very careful as well. And with these three inputs, we're constantly looking at, what we're doing right now. And sometimes we tend to adapt that even on a monthly basis, that we take a direction, right? Let's say on where we are going. And as we go, a month down the line, a quarter down the line, depending on how things are evolving, if required, we adjust to that strategy. As an example, I think 30 days ago, nobody saw Omicron coming.
Yes.
And we were taking a certain direction. And in the last 3 weeks, everything's changed when Omicron has come. Now, whether it's as lethal, whether the fact that, a large part of our company and country are vaccinated. So everything is changing very, very quickly. So the key part for us is making sure that we remain adaptive and agile to be able to change along with the environment.
I know. So this is interesting, that interesting perspective that it is driven by client. Can I ask you something in your own perspective without naming a particular client? Are clients sensitive and they are expecting same from their partners? I mean, like Concentrix, right? As they do within their own organization. I mean, so what has been are they fair in terms of expecting same from their partner service providers as they do within their own organizations? Do you see a difference or it is all the same?
Yeah, so I think, it's amazing that in the last 18 months, COVID has truly brought out humanity in a very different way from people. Whether it's, individuals and the way we're reacting with each other, or it's companies and how we're doing business with each other. So we've really seen even clients be very, very supportive wherever it's possible and required to really say, hey, it's better to be on the safer side. It's better to be on the right side. Not just in terms of what makes business sense, but what makes people sense. So I don't, fortunately, we've not seen clients behave in a way where they're harsher on us than they are on their own people. I think humanity is really, taken over there, and really there is equitable treatment.
How amazing. How amazing. Great to hear that. Raghu, I was coming to you. What has been your experience? Because you have been in industry for very long and leading such a large global organization, and you're a veteran in the industry. One specific question I want to check with you. What's your perception is this response? Because when we say return to office, it has a mixed feeling, right? I mean, there is no one answer, right? There must be some people who are extremely excited. Oh, now I'm going back to work, right? And but reaction cannot be same, is not same for everyone, right? Sometimes it could be gender specific, it could be age related, level related, role related. Can you unpack this for me? What has been your experience and what are you seeing around in the industry?
Thanks, Sanjeev, and great insights both by Anu and Anupama. And I can only speak from experience and what I see around me and what my colleagues in the industry are talking about. And the focus, I think, should not be looking at directly jumping into the solution mode. I think we need to understand what the future of work will be, which is more and more interplay of human and technology. And the traditional model of what work has been, I think, has totally been broken. I think that's one thing which we need to understand. And the current model, in my view, has morphed with a process where the pandemic has actually hastened the transition into a very dynamic, flexible, and individual focused approach. Because if you look at a one size shoe fits all in terms of the solution and coming up with newer plans, it's bound to fail.
Yeah.
The focus, in my view, has clearly moved towards work fitting to our lives rather than the other way around. Because otherwise, traditionally, we start at 9 in the morning and probably see the end at 12 midnight. That's how work revolved. But I think increasingly, the pandemic has ensured that organizations and businesses in particular look at it from a totally inverted or the reverse method in terms of how things need to work. Especially when we spoke of future of work, it was more a forum discussion or a discussion in conferences. And today, I think with pandemic, I think it's work anywhere, any place, anytime by anyone. I think that's how things have changed. And I think businesses and HR leaders now need to clearly look at the options, the opportunities, and the challenges that exist in the way, in terms of understanding what work is. Work is where work actually happens and not a noun, as we say. And increasingly, when we talk of return to office, I think, in my view, it has to be more in terms of where you need to network, need to understand a lot better the nuances of the org culture, or in terms of where I think you need to build in a greater understanding, where you can't do things, say, online. A face-to-face approach is where the workplace can be defined. So I think the concept and the way our styles need to change is an understanding what can be done virtually has to be looked at from that context and not in terms of everybody needs to come to office and then things will come back to normal. The way I look at it is increasingly it's very dynamic, and with newer and newer variants coming in, I believe the macro challenges will continue to dog us, whether it's the establishment, the government, business leaders, and more importantly, even for healthcare workers and providers. Because ultimately, there's a fear scenario and there's an actual cases where people have challenges of getting infected and the likes. Therefore, I think the need is to deliberate, discuss, and disagree, and then agree in terms of what and how we need to come up with the work, return to work that needs to happen. So
Absolutely.
I think the focus should be in terms of what was true in 2020, that is no compromise on employee well-being and safety, but ensuring business continuity at all times. So phased opening of workplaces, the hybrid model, and the likes will come into play. And industries which can allow, facilitate, and work happen virtually, I think, should look at more innovative approaches. So the return to work should be very clearly defined. Say if you're talking of, say, a gym or a manufacturing organization, or say a mall. I think while there are surrogates and there are alternative approaches, I think it should be different strokes for different types of industries and type of people who come
You're
to
right.
work. Without that, I think the HR leaders will struggle in terms of what to come up with in terms of return to office or return to work. Will it be by rotation and all of that? And if you're talking by rotation, then the basics which stood the test of time in terms of vaccination, sanitization, social seating arrangements, social distancing, and logging into Arogya Setu and are things which we need to come into play. So hybrid model, fully vaccinated employees, maybe 30% of people coming to work at a particular given point of time are things which we need to look at is how I would look at it.
Sir, I mean, thank for this, very overall view of, what's happening around. And you're right, we need to understand the issue better first before we solve it. But my specific question is, in your view, who is happy coming to work? I mean, if you do personas, it's a segmentation of the employees, suppose if you do. Who in your view is happy, looking forward to come to office, and who is not very happy? So do you see some trend here? For example, are women more happy coming back to work than men, for example, or the young generation, right? They are more happy to come to work than the seniors. Do you see some trend?
You are putting me in a spot by saying, are women
Yes.
happy or not happy? I think it's very unfair to ask that question because I don't think the traditional model of looking at things, saying that women will be happy or unhappy is not the question. Especially from an India context, where a woman also works in large families and you have nuclear families. So even the concept of women and the way they work and the background they come from is so different in a country like India. People work in large families, people work where the entire family revolves around a woman. And there are women who also will say, Raghu, enough. If I sit at home, I'll be doing this and that and this and that. So I'd rather come back to work. So it's very difficult to generalize in terms of who's more
Absolutely.
happy. But generally, if one looks at it, youngsters probably, I think, are getting too claustrophobic sitting at home. So I would put it that way, freshers would rather come out to work is how I would look at it in all my interactions with youngsters. And tenured and senior employees prefer flexibility in terms of having the hybrid model, by choice, by rotation, and the likes. So I don't think there is one answer which they should work upon. Look at the age profile, the gender profile, the experience profile, and then look at what works for the organization while looking at the individual. So the minute you try to blanket roll a decision,
No, we can't do that. Absolutely. But I think it's good to know the trend and preferences in general. What are the trends? Anupma, I mean, what are you seeing? I mean, is there any particular trend from your experience? Employee segmentation.
Yeah, no, I couldn't have said it better. It is very, very hard to generalize. Exactly like Sir just mentioned, there is a segment of our staff that are actually looking forward to coming back. They miss the interaction, they miss the water cooler conversations, they miss the ability, especially some, who have a lot of work that they accomplish as teams. Sometimes they miss the ability to just be able to sit down in a meeting room, write down ideas on a whiteboard, and just be able to solution that. So we do have several staff that are coming back to us asking, when are you going to, can we come back? Can we come back some days a week? What's the thought there? And then there are others who generally prefer to work from home. You'll have a segment, and sometimes it could be the older one that's saying, let's say, what I can do without the 1.5 hours of travel, I can use that time more productively. So it is very, very hard to generalize it. It is dependent on really what priorities for different people are. And we're certainly seeing a very wide range of responses coming in, which are really across the spectrum from the two extremes to also a lot of people that are in the middle say, okay, let me come back 2-3 times a week and let me work from home the other 2 days a week, which is, truly sort of hybrid in a sense. So it's right across the spectrum, really.
Yeah. So thank you very much. And I know it's very tough. And I mean, I can just imagine, Anupma, how tough it would be for you even to think, because there's no pattern that you can draw upon your policies, because You have to think on the feet and listen to employees continuously and respond to them. So it's very, very, it's a big challenge for the, I would say, for the leaders like you. So Anu, question to you.
Sure.
Are you seeing, and in your research, because it's a confusing state. I mean, some employees want to work from home, some are very easy, they're comfortable going to office, and it depends on the role. And I can see some comments, it also depends on the kind of industry you're working with, right? Some industry you can, there are some industries where you just cannot work from home, right? I mean, that's the nature of work, right? Like in pharma or in manufacturing. I mean, we have some participants from those industries. Is there a bias that a manager can get into? Employee working at the office or the factory or in the field, depending on the situation, and someone who is working from home, given a choice. Do you think there's a potential psychologically for a manager to get into bias that, oh, the person who is working from office is working harder, is doing better compared to someone who is working from home? We have spoken about it enough, earlier also, but in today's time, when it is going to be the way of working, hybrid working, that some will work from home, some will work from office, that seems to be the general trend around. What are you seeing? What is research saying in terms of the manager's bias in particular?
I think, there's a couple of different, I think, issues that we need to look at, which form more of a big picture. I think to answer your question directly, I would say that there can be bias, and I think sensitization and leadership training and training for team managers is really important during this time. And it's probably something that a lot of organizations missed out on, because the shift to work from home happened so quickly and it was sort of coerced onto them. So you have people who don't necessarily have all of the resources or facilities at home to be able to perform their job to the same level that they may have been able to do in office, which can cause a bias from the manager's perspective. It also, the managers are required to change their management style, their leadership style. You can't perhaps get a response as quickly as you used to be able to. But I think it's really important to consider a couple of things that were mentioned previously by Anupama and Raghu as well, in terms of demographics. I do think that research seems to indicate that, and research isn't by any means conclusive, and of course there is individual difference, but women have been disproportionately impacted, even in India, by the pandemic. And I think the reason is because women often have other roles in the household, especially in India, and it was quite difficult for them to be able to consistently be at work, be online, and also have their children at home, not able to go to school, have to run the households. That's one issue. I think younger people, and even regardless of gender, had an issue with kind of feeling like they were working all the time because there wasn't that separation between work life and home life. And so I think for organizations, whilst hybrid working is definitely one of the flexible options that can be considered, there is no precedent. And so I think, employers have to work even harder. And I think the HR teams need to work harder to sort of educate people around well-being and things like work-life balance and the changing nature of work. Because I think COVID also sort of required people to shift priorities a little bit. And whilst work performance might seem like the obvious kind of, like barometer of how well people are doing, we need to think more long-term, because it's been a really psychologically stressful time for people, and their work performance would naturally be impacted by that. So I think a certain level of understanding and compassion is required, and the support systems that I was talking about. So helping people build their sort of personal psychological resources and having the right support systems in place, both in remote management situations, as well as within the culture in the office, to kind of help that transition, because otherwise it won't be sustainable. We might think that everyone's really excited to come back to work, but then all of those kind of remnants of the stress that they have gone through over the last 2 years will start to show unless we're able to kind of manage it. So yeah, that would be, I would say, an important thing.
Thank you. Raghu, your advice, thank you very much, Anu, for that. And I think you're right. This is the time when managers who are the front line, right, for their handling everything with the employees or the team leaders, as the case may be. I think one, assess those roles are tough, right? It's not easy. But in today's time, this balancing act, they take the maximum load on them, the first layer of the managers, right? And to enable them to deal with this, whether to be able to equip them to understand that they don't get into a natural bias that people can get into. So Raghu, any recommendation from you or your experience, how can we really enable this set of managers? And I really feel they're really under a lot of pressure because they are accountable for certain delivery, but they're also accountable for making sure that people are doing well, their well-being is taken care, and how to balance the both. That's the title here. The balancing act is most, there at the first line managers level. How can we as HR professionals or as leaders can enable the managers? I mean, any advice from you, from your experience on this in particular subject?
Advice, I think, is too strong. I would say some suggestions, because we have experience when women are on maternity leave. And there's a huge bias at that point of time in terms of growth, in terms of new projects, in terms of how you get your limited resources and opportunities and balance it out with people who are working very hard in office. I think so. There are a lot of parallels which we need to build and try to see how is it we can overcome this bias. You rightly put it, saying that I think first the leadership should be clear in terms of understanding what are those biases, overt, covert, conscious, unconscious, and understand that, and actually consciously do some clear, straight talk, workshops, or whatever to say that, guys, we are in an unprecedented situation. The balance sheet, the revenue numbers continue to look good, average, poor, and how different it is, will be as time goes by. And then look at what is the situation working from office or working virtually, and then try to build it. Because continuously the focus is a person will work optimally if he or she is supervised and not frittering away his or her time, is not very compliant with data integrity, data security, or probably is not putting the right hours, even if the work is getting completed, or maybe he's attending personal chores when it is actually he or she should be working. I think these are some examples which need to be built in real-time situations. Look at outcomes and the added pressure of working in an environment which is a home. And home is not something like how I'm sitting in front of a computer with no disturbances around me. People live in one-room apartments where the father, mother, husband, wife, children all work there. So all of those challenges continue to exist. So what is it managers need to be made aware of? See, equip is the next stage, building awareness.
Awareness is the first step.
How and what needs to be done. Or making flippant statements like, hey, it'll be back to normal, so it stretch that extra bit. And the person will actually be struggling, and you're getting smart advisors coming in. I think these are things which I think building that awareness is what will make a huge difference. And especially and increasingly with the hybrid environment coming in, there'll be that people whom I'm constantly in touch in person works better. Will be another bias that will get built over a period of time. So how do you balance that out? How do you eliminate or reduce that impact of a face-to-face interaction versus people working virtually? Or employees are less productive when they work remote. And the element of DEI, I think those are things which need to be, which was a requirement even before the pandemic, now which further needs to get enhanced, building in that awareness. And is it by chance that he or she's managed to work better? I think are things which one needs to watch or guard against, is how I would look at it. So some of the things which we need to focus as organization, in addition to all the building awareness, soft skills, training, and looking at scenarios which will build in those biases, I think concretely organizations should invest a lot more on hardware, IT infrastructure, better facilities, working from home are things which need to also be built in. And look for opportunities where they can increase more one-on-one, face-to-face, direct interactions are things which will work. Otherwise, we will be working in great confusion and the biases will only get concretized and then it will be free for all. And all the biases which a woman was facing pre-COVID will now apply to all people working remote.
That's a
So
great.
I think these are things which we need to watch on.
I think that's a great insight, and the analogy that you drawn. I mean, we have been hearing about it, and I think it's in a very different context to different set of employees. So absolutely point well taken. Anupma, one very different question to you. How do you think families are reacting to employees returning to office? What do you hear from employees? I mean, are they happy, or I mean, enough, I've seen enough of you, please go to office, right? Is that what you're hearing? Or they're feeling, no, we can't do without you. So what are you hearing from employees, and in your own experience, what's family's reaction to people returning to office?
Yeah, that's interesting. Again, Sanjeev, there isn't a general trend that we are seeing. I think it just differs very much from person to person, because it also really depends on what is the social and family setting that people are in, right? In some cases, you have a great support system, you have enough place in the house to work, and everything is sort of working okay. So, and it's working for people. In other cases, it's a little bit more crunch. So it is really varied, and it depends from person to person. But I think the one thing that we are sort of, one thing that we've been trying to do over the last 18 months is very consciously recognizing the fact that when people are working from home, there is greater sacrifices in many ways that families are making to be able to accommodate that, right? And for people to be successful in what they are doing, families really have a very, very big contribution in doing that.
Absolutely.
And as people are working at home, we've also realized that as we're engaging with people, it's also a great opportunity to, one, engage with their families also. And second, to also, recognize and appreciate the efforts that families are putting in, allowing our staff to be successful. So, very, very small things. For example, recently, about a month ago, we were running it was the entire festive season. So we did a number of events that we did, right? And one of them was a gratitude event that we ran for an entire month. And we actually ran specific campaigns which were focused on families. So we did a campaign around thanking your partner, because in all of this, your partners really have a very big role to play, especially when you're working from home, to help make you successful. We did one around thanking just your families by and large. So, people did stuff with their parents, with their kids. So we involve them. When we do things like a virtual meet, like a virtual dinner, we've really said, why do we really need to restrict it only to the employee? Isn't it a great opportunity? We're anyways doing it virtually. Why not get the family involved? So, for example, I did one with my team about 2 months back, and we had, the spouse and the children join us. It's just a small,
it was on a Zoom. It was on a Zoom, coming together and eating together.
Yeah, it was. So it was bring your own food. Since we couldn't meet, we did it a couple of months back. It was about the June timeframe where we still didn't think it may be appropriate to bring people back. But we really recognize that, you're asking the team to come together for dinner at, let's say, 8 p.m. And it's not really in the office or an outside setting. It is within the same house where families are there as well. So why don't we make it slightly broader? So I think what we've had the opportunity to do is really, in some ways, also engage families. And to that extent, when they come back, when our staff come back, we do see a little bit of at least that relationship and bond that we've built in some ways with the family as well. So in some cases, when people are going back, families are also sort of associating with that. But, other than that, a lot, it depends from individual to individual and what really works in their setting. And families have very, very mixed responses based on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Anupa, if I can continue with you, how do we humanize this return to office? In some cases it is easy, in some cases it's a trauma, right? It's a lot of adjustment people have to make. They have just settled their life around that, maybe small baby or some person that they have to take care of, maybe elder parents or someone, right? Or a distance. Some people might have gone, there was a remark, people might have gone to their hometown and started working from there, right? Now someone is asking them to come, right? Can you give just a quick 1 minute or 2 minutes answer on, I mean, your perspective on how do we humanize this return to office?
Sure. So I think one, communication is very, very important.
Okay.
And communication that is detailed, that is to the point, and that is transparent. In some cases, we will have situations, and that's not just, for our organization. For example, if we were to look throughout the pandemic, we were all buying groceries, right? That means somebody was there in the shop sort of delivering groceries. We were all
Yes.
ordering food. So somebody was working. So I think where we do need to get people back, and it is an absolute mandate, we need to be very transparent with them about what we are doing, why we are doing it, and the help that we need from them, right? So why is it important that we do this together as a team? So it's not you versus me, it is how do we come together to deliver this for the end client? And second is also making sure that we do our bit to make the right investments in making it a safe place to work for them. So whether it's social distancing, the sanitization, the cabs, we've made investments in ionization on our offices. So all of that which is required to assure them that we made investments in, for example, vaccinations. We sponsored that for all of our staff. So we do our bit to making sure that we're taking care of their safety and well-being.
All right. No, thank you. I think this is very important, and people are finding ways, right? They're learning from each other currently how to humanize this, how to make it really safe for people to come back to office, right? I mean, so thanks for sharing your inputs on this. Anu, coming to you, people have a lot to say about what they like, what they don't like, what they prefer. How do you think organizations should study and find the readiness index, whether the team is ready or not, right? So what are the trends you're seeing? Are companies doing surveys around this, or they're looking at some reports, outside research reports, and then taking decisions? You have any view on this?
I think that companies and businesses we've worked with, our clients, they understand that there's a problem and they can see that they need to put support systems in place, but it's often difficult for them to understand exactly how to implement it. And I would say, to extend Anupuma's point, absolutely, the health aspect is really important, because a lot of anxiety, they're calling, a lot of experts call this re-entry anxiety, like going back to work anxiety, is focused around health. But we tend to focus on physical health and not psychological health, which is as important. And so I think knowledge and awareness for the employee, so in that communication, it's really important for the employer to be inclusive, so that the employee is also having a voice in what happens, what they're comfortable with, and making them more aware of some of the things which they may face when they come back to work. Because I think a lot of people are very excited to come back because we've been away from work for so long, but also they're not really able to recognize some of the symptoms they may face if they're facing just, I wouldn't say so much mental health difficulties, but just like responses to stress, because it was such a stressful time for everyone. Research is showing that people are suffering post-traumatic disorder symptoms, and often they manifest in physical symptoms. It might be like migraines, it might be musculoskeletal difficulties, it can be cognitive, where someone's just not able to focus as well, not able to concentrate. So it's really important that alongside the physical sort of infrastructure that you put in place to deal with infection, that you also have collateral kind of protective measures for psychological health, and allow people to not feel guilty if these things start to affect them, because most people don't really understand what happens to them or why they're feeling a certain way. And what happens is that they just try and work harder, but they're not able to overcome the issues that they're facing.
So Anu, just to specific question, are companies doing, most of the clients that you work with or the companies, they do a survey, right? I mean,
Yeah.
And Anupa, maybe you can also, Raghu, are you guys doing a survey involving all the employees? How are you feeling? Do you want to come back? What help do you need? I mean, is there kind of survey? Is it shareable with the employees? Hey, this is what the outcome is. How do you do that? I mean,
yeah, we do tend to run pulse checks from time to time to really understand what what our staff are feeling. And about the 2 times that we've run it so far, our results have been very common to what we were, what we're reading
Okay.
in general in the market reports across the board. So, almost every study that I've read, whether it's McKinsey, BCG, that have done a survey on what people are saying, very, very similar to what we've seen in terms.
But you do a survey, do you share that with employees? Hey, this is what the outcome is, and that we are taking action on that, or it is for management action typically?
Are you talking specifically to people returning to the office, or just, more sort of a satisfaction or engagement survey?
Yeah, coming to office. I mean, that's the topic here.
We haven't really done sort of formal rollouts, Sanjeev. We're talking about here's what we've seen, but we've discussed it with the leaders and then they cascade it within their teams.
All right.
And whatever comes back is feedback, but it's typically, it's not sort of an open-ended one. It is more to really understand the pulse on whether people are looking to come back working from home or hybrid.
Okay. So Raghu, one question to you. Thank you, Anupma. There's a debate on whether the performance or productivity improves working from home or it doesn't, right? So there are different views around that. What is your, as an industry veteran and leader, what is your practical view on this? I mean, across industries, I know it can be different for different industries. Wherever work from home can happen, in general, has the performance or productivity gone up or it has gone down?
See, when we started off, I can talk about 1.5 years back or even earlier, when we started off work from home, the first 2 months, and if you recollect for our organization, that particular quarter, the performance was not in line with the common trend with which our organization is known, was growth quarter on quarter on quarter. But I think this was primarily because confusion, lack of focus. You had a lot of people being infected. You had tragedies in the family, feeling lost, job losses, potential job losses. And that was the situation. I think what we did was we immediately at that point of time did the pulse surveys around a theme in terms of where we felt the maximum challenge was, and did 2 things with alacrity. One is in terms of sharing the results of the pulse survey, and 2, communicating on actions that were taken. I think that builds back the faith and confidence of the employees in terms of the organization is serious about what it is. So there was a dip in performance. We understood what was the challenge that is there, acknowledged that this is a reality that is there, and then said, this is what we need to do going forward, both from an org context and from an individual employee context. And from then onwards, the subsequent quarters saw a quarter-on-quarter increase in terms of how the performance of the organization was. So that clearly indicates that the employee will look at what or how the organization is responding to the challenges he or she faces. We continue, I think they're still continuing, that's what my colleagues tell. We run an intervention called Head and Heart, where we say, feel from your head and think from your heart and act accordingly. So that's the way we look at it. And like as Anupama said, I think communication is the key in terms of saying, what are the challenges? What is the response? How are we working towards to make it happen? That's at one level. It's just not enough just communicating and saying this is what it is. I think what are the actions we are taking? Because hardware and convenience and comfort at working virtually are things which came up very strongly. I think the minute you fortified those requirements or strengthened and facilitated those processes, like there was a one-time assistance given in terms of making the work environment at home more congenial. I think all of those went a long way in ensuring that while, as they say, form is temporary, but class is permanent. So after that, if you look at the quarter-on-quarter results, I think it's only seeing the graph is moving up, is how I would look at it. So feel from the head, think from the heart, and then act what comes out based on that with solid support in terms of visible actions. I think that's what is the key, the way I would look at it.
Yeah, I think great analogy, head and heart. I think I've made a note of this. This has anchored in my mind. Absolutely. All right. So, Anupma, one very specific question. What specific action, maybe 1 minute if you can answer, specific actions you are taking to create a safe workplace for people to come back, right? What are 3-4 key things you're doing? I mean,
Sanjeev, sorry, your question was, what are some of the key things that we're doing to make sure
make
that
the
it's a
physical
safe
workspace
workplace?
when people
Sure.
come back, whether
Yeah.
it's ensuring vaccination for the fellow colleagues, or the places are sitting the way you people sit is they keep a social distance, or the mask, etc. What are
Right.
3-4 key things that you're doing so that they feel
Sure.
comfortable that, okay, I want to come, but I want to make sure that I'm safe there?
Sure, absolutely. So I think one very key and critical one has been the vaccination. We were among the very, very early adopters to introduce this, and also Concentrix globally made a statement even before vaccinations were available that we would sponsor this for our staff. So that's a commitment that we've continued to have.
Excellent.
We've had campaigns, and we've done this in many ways. We've done camps within the office where we've, ferried people into the office and gone ahead and done vaccination camps to enable. Plus, we have a reimbursement process, so on and so forth. And we've seen very, very good traction there.
Okay.
So that's definitely, one very important one. In addition to that, when we look at our physical environment, there are a number of initiatives we took. One, of course, is the social distancing that's followed in, elevators, washrooms. We extended our workstations to make sure that between workstations, we were following social distancing. Our reception and common areas, our cafeterias, pantry, all of that, we followed the social distancing norms in terms of cordoning off where people could and could not sit. We've also made it a touchless environment. So, things, smaller things like when you open the door, or when you're using sanitizers, or how you were logging in. So for example, we were on biometrics earlier. When COVID happened and we brought people back, we changed that to a QR code as an example. So making it a touchless environment in every way possible. Our transport continues to be, again, an area where we've gone ahead and put in social distancing norms there as well. So the entire, sensitization around social distancing, sanitization of cabs, PPE kits available.
Right.
Plus, and we've also done that, for example, when we talked about the vaccination as an example, when we've got vendor staff that work in our office. You've got staff in transport, you've got staff in facilities. So we partnered very, very closely with the providers there as well. And wherever
Make
they were
sure they
not
also follow, they get the same treatment.
Absolutely. And wherever the employers were not doing that, in many cases, we've extended that facility to them as well to make sure that we're covering them. And plus regular training of all of our staff that are manning our facilities to make sure that all social distancing norms are being followed. So that we're doing in a big way. And then ionization, again, huge investment we made to make sure that in our offices, we've got ionization to keep air pure. So as far as norms are concerned, or precautions to be taken as far as physical environment is concerned, we've really gone out and made a lot of investments there.
All right. Thank you very much for sharing. So we are on top of the hour, and we are respectful for the time for everyone. So while I'm summarizing, thank you very much for Anu, your perspective, Anupma and Raghu sir, your perspective. It was very enriching for me in particular to know, because it's a lot of very complex subject right now, and no one knows what the trends are. We are trying to figure out on our feet as we go along. But I think there are 2-3 key takeaways that I have. One, I think the humanity is the first, right? And I'm very happy to hear that even clients are very sensitive about the partners of the service provider, that the humanity has to be first, and the safety of employees wherever they are, whether our employees or the service providers employees, they are taken care. One sec, let me mute her. So that is one part. Secondly, sir, that head and heart analogy that you have given is excellently, I have made a note of this. absolutely great that you mentioned. And I think there is a possibility of humanizing the whole return to office. I think that's the theme that I'm looking at, and what I'm hearing from different speakers that we have, that's where the world is corporate is moving, and there's a lot of responsibility on HR and the leaders to humanize the whole thing and enable the managers who are facing at the front end, to enable them, sensitize them to how to deal with the situation. That's the summary I'm summarizing. I'm sure you all would have also taken a note of some other takeaways from this session. So before we end, a couple of announcement. I'll just take 1 minute, if you allow me. We as Enabling World has a few interesting topics to offer around this topic, whether it is a future-proofing your HR post-COVID workplace, or it is return to office, how to enable managers and the HR team about the hybrid workplace, or unconscious bias that we suffer from, or managing difficult conversations. There are some of the topics, but if in case anyone is interested, we'll be very happy to support and help you with that. So that is one small sharing I wanted to do. And before we end, a small request, if we can, we'll end the topic. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining in, and be very safe and happy returning back to office wherever it is possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Pleasure being part of this group. Picked up so many new nuances. Thank you once again.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
you, Anupma. Thank you, audience. Amazing comments. We could not cover all, but we tried to cover as much as we could. Thank you very much. All right. Stay safe. Bye-bye.